Here we are with the law of diminishing marginal utility. So first assumption we make here is that utility is measurable and some numbers can be assigned to each level of utility. We call it utils. So this word utils was given by Walras, and Walras gave this concept of utils. But however, Marshall preferred to measure utility in terms of money. So Alfred Marshall preferred to measure utility in terms of money. So here assumption says utility is quantifiable entity. Utility is a quantifiable entity. Utility is a quantifiable entity. So this is our first assumption. So this approach is also called as cardinal approach because of this assumption that cardinal measurement of utility. So this is first assumption. Now we are going to second assumption. If you have doubt, you can stop me in between also. Then we are going to, since we are measuring utility of a commodities in terms of money as Marshall did, so we have another assumption that is called as constant marginal utility of money. Constant marginal utility of money. Why did we make such an assumption? Because when you have more money, its utility is less to you, and when you have less money, you have more utility of it. So Marshall thought that if money's utility is not constant, how can it measure something uh, whose utility or which utility changes? So he made an assumption. So he says that if money is supposed to provide the measuring rod of utility, then eventually, as with all measuring rod, its a unit must be invariant. It must measure the same amount of utility in all circumstances. So this means that if you want to measure a utility of 4 units of apple, so any number of time you measure, so given the marginal utility of money is same, and the same person is there under same set of circumstances, 4 units of apple will give the same amount of utility in each circumstances. So next is utilities are independent. So utilities are independent. This assumption is important because if you want to know what is utility of 4 commodities, let's say A, B, C, and D, then obvious it is that if they are not independent, then you cannot write something like this. So utility of A plus utility of B plus utility of C plus utility of D. So what we want to say is if they are independent, if the utility of A, B and C and D commodities are independent, then you can write it as sum of utilities from A, B, C and D. If they are not independent, then there would be some cross product to UA, UB plus so on and UP, UD and higher order interactions also. I am just writing first order interactions UA, UB so on up to UC, UD. If there are higher order interaction, assuming higher level of interaction, higher level of mutual dependence, then you can write UA, UB, UC, UD also. So this is important. This is important. Utilities are independent. So utility from apple and utility from orange, they are independent. Again, utility of grape is independent of utility derived from apple. Okay. Okay. So here we are with three assumptions. I'm coming to the fourth assumption, that is introspection. So introspection says, am I still audible? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So
सर
introspection says that
सर
I
बीच
can,
बीच में सर साउंड एको होता है सर.
echoing is there.
यस सर.
Okay. But I cannot stop any of this. Mm, Maybe I will try something that reduces this problem. Because recording is on, I cannot change anything. So introspection says that uh, whatever you feel regarding something like eating apple, eating banana, or doing something, you can feel that other persons would be feeling the same. Would be feeling the same. जो मुझे feel होता है वही दूसरों को feel होता है. जैसा मुझे एक्सपीरियंस होता है किसी एक्टिविटी को करने पे वैसा ही दूसरों को भी फील होता है. So that is introspection. So literally we can say introspection is the ability of observer to reconstruct events which go in the minds of the other person. So one person can reconstruct events which can go into the minds of other person if he experiences the same set of activities. Uh, so introspection methods is very important because we are using a deductive method. We are not using inductive method, but we are using deductive method, and therefore it is by understanding the feelings of others, so we are deriving the law. So introspection is very important, and we assume that what I feel, others too feel the same way under that same set of circumstances with same set of activities. And there is one more important assumption and must not be ignored, that is rationality. Rationality says that every person or all economic agents, all economic agents, they are interested. Economic agents means I'm not just talking of individual persons. I'm not just talking of individual persons. I'm also talking of organizations like our university, JNKV, some company or business organization, you can say, association. They are all economic agents. So they are all economic agents. So what do they do? Under assumption of rationality, it is assumed that they all maximize their benefits and minimize the cost. They all maximize their benefits and minimize the cost. That's what rationality assumption says. So they are, so here consumer is also individual person. So we assume that all consumers, those who are going to consume the commodities, they all behave rationally. That means they derive maximum benefit from consumption of the commodities which they have purchased. And last assumption, maybe it's not there in many books, but it says that utility is function of quantity of commodity consumed. Quantity of commodity consumed. So if there are, let's say, n number of commodity, then we can say that utility U is function of x1, x2, so on up to xn. So if there are n number of commodity and their quantities can be written as x1, x2 and so on up to xn, we can say that utility is a function of quantity of commodities consumed. This is in general, specific functional form I have not written. Any problem in assumptions? Yes? Any problem? To anyone?
No, sir.
No, sir.
There is notes also, but still I am. Then the law. Already I told you, but history if you want to know. So 1894, sorry, not 1954, 1854. Just 3 years before, 1857, we had first organized revolution against Britishers under Jhansi Rani, right? So just 3 years before that, there was one German economist that's called as Hermann Ulrich Gosen. We call it H. Gosen. He observed this law. H. Gosen observed this law. He observed this law. So, accordingly, the great economist JNKVV, he named this law of diminishing marginal utility, LDMU, as Gosen's first law. Gosen's first law, right? And when Marshall worked on it and gave, complete details on this law, and he formulated a law as a law, then it came to be known as given by or proposed by, formulated by Alfred Marshall. So this law is formulated by, finally, and proposed by Alfred Marshall. An English economist, Alfred Marshall. Right? So what did Marshall say? Marshall said that the additional benefits which a person derives from a given increase of his stock of a thing diminishes with every increase in stock of that he already has. So if you have something and you are deriving some, utility, then the utility from increase in stock, continuous increase in stock decreases. So now coming to some more assumptions, because this law is related with consumption. So this law is related with consumption. So we must impose some further restriction on how the commodity is consumed, because how it is consumed, how commodity is consumed affects how utility is derived. So first restriction we say that homogeneity of commodity. This is some restriction we are imposing on how commodity is consumed. So the commodity consumed is of homogeneity. Homogeneity means homogeneous quality. Homogeneity in terms of its a color, taste, all attributes. In terms of all attributes, the commodity is homogeneous. Consumption of the units of commodity should be consumed without interval. So consumption without interval. So what does it say is that if you are eating chapatis or some fruit, then there should not be a big lag of 4 and 5 hours in which you can digest it and again reconsume it with same amount of hunger. So interval is not given. It means that whatever chapati or fruits you are eating, it's continuous. You are continuously eating. You won't give pause. During this particular activity, taste, preferences, income, etc. remains constant, unchanged. So taste, preferences, income, etc. We are saying to mean that any other thing which can affect are constant. They won't change during that period of consumption. Then price of commodity goods should remain same. Price is also constant. Price is also constant. Price is also constant. Price is also constant. Right? So now we all know that marginal utility decreases, total utility increases.
Sir, please repeat third point.
Third point, we mean that anything which can affect a utility derived from consumption of commodity remains constant. So taste, preferences, income, etc. are constant. And price, again we are writing separately, we could have considered here also, because price is the major variable, which can affect. We'll consider this price thing also, because when we say measured in terms of money, right? Utility, Marshall assumed it's measured in terms of money. So price is another important variable which we cannot ignore in this etc. Therefore, we have written it here. Okay?
Okay, sir.
Now, these were some restrictions which we imposed on the consumption, and you all know this graph. Quantity of commodity, and here utility and marginal utility. And we also total utility and marginal utility. So this graph starts like this. So this is your total utility TU, and here is some marginal utility, right? Corresponding to this maximum level of total utility, marginal utility would become 0 at this point, and this is called as point of satisfaction. So complete satisfaction a person derives at this point. Okay. So this is also called as so this point. So here maximum utility is observed, but marginal utility is zero. Marginal utility is zero, and therefore we can say that therefore this point of maximum satisfaction. Beyond this point, you won't consume because marginal utility is negative. So if you consider this is the positive total utility, which is negative. Again, this is positive amount of quantity, and there can be never negative quantity. Physical quantities can never be negative. So this is negative. This is negative. So So this is all we know. Now coming to rationality aspect. Coming to rationality aspect. So we all say that what is benefit in this consumption of commodity? Utility is the benefit part. Utility is your gross benefit from consumption of commodity, right? This is the gross benefit you are getting. Why do you consume commodity? Just because you get utility. And there is something called cost. So price multiplied by quantity consumed. It's not there in notes, so you may write it down. So we want net benefit, right? Net benefit. So what is net benefit? It's called gross benefit minus cost. And what is gross benefit? It's utility minus price times quantity consumed. Right? इसमें कोई डाउट है तो बता दीजिए. Any doubt? No? Any doubt in this? Why we are consuming commodity? Because it gives utility, and that utility represents the gross benefit to us. Cost is price times the quantity multiplied by is the cost. So if price is 4 rupees, it is 4 per unit. And how many units you have consumed? 5 units. How much cost will be there? How much? How much? How much cost will be there? Tough question? Is it a tough question? Yes? Is it a tough question?
No, sir.
Is this a tough question?
No, sir.
Hello? Students?
Yes, sir.
यस सर
कोई टफ क्वेश्चन है? एक यूनिट 4 रुपए के तो 5 यूनिट का कितना हुआ?
20.
20.
20.
20.
20 सर
तो रुपीज 20, राइट? तो यही हम यहाँ पे कर रहे हैं. मैं ऑडिबल हूँ?
Yes, sir.
So price multiplied by quantity, so price is 4 multiplied by quantity 5, so it becomes 20, right? ऐसा ही होगा?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So what you can say is, if by assumption, we had a last assumption, utility is function of what? Utility is function of what? Quantity consumed. So let's say Q is the quantity consumed, U is the utility function, right? Minus P is the price, Q is the quantity consumed. PQ, ठीक है? P times Q is PQ. हो गया? और नेट बेनिफिट को हम लिख लेते हैं NB. So I can write NB is equal to this. ऐसा लिख सकते हैं?
Yes,
यस
sir.
सर
Okay. Now, my only purpose to demonstrate here is how we get the thumb rule. How we get the thumb rule. So it's not that difficult. So whenever we want to maximize or minimize something with respect to something, we need to take differentiation. So I will just differentiate net benefit with respect to what? यहाँ पे क्या चीज वेरी कर रही है? प्राइस तो कांस्टेंट है, यूटिलिटी भी क्यू का फंक्शन है, और कॉस्ट भी, अब अगर पी कांस्टेंट है तो क्यू का ही फंक्शन रहेगा, प्राइस तो कांस्टेंट है, जितना क्वांटिटी कंज्यूम करोगे उसके प्रोपोर्शनेटली कॉस्ट बढ़ जाएगी, तो सिर्फ बचा क्या चेंज करने के लिए? क्यू। तो अब क्या हो जाएगा? करना कुछ नहीं है। तो अब ये जो है आप देख सकते हैं, यूटिलिटी को हमने डिफरेंशिएट किया विद रिस्पेक्ट टू क्वांटिटी। तो मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी हम कैसे लिखते थे अभी तक? डेल्टा यू बाय डेल्टा क्यू ऐसे लिखते थे। तो ये क्या हुआ हमारा? मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी। यूटिलिटी इज चेंजिंग विद रिस्पेक्ट टू चेंज इन क्वांटिटी। तो ये हुआ हमारा मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी माइनस P कांस्टेंट है, P को बाहर ले लो तो बचेगा dQ by dQ, हो जाएगा मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी माइनस P, क्योंकि ये dQ से dQ कैंसिल आउट होके 1 हो गया, ठीक है, बचेगा 1। इसमें कोई डाउट?
No, sir.
No, sir.
यस संगीता? यस सचिन? मनीष?
यस सर।
कोई डाउट है इसमें?
नो सर।
No, sir.
इसमें कोई डाउट?
No, sir.
नो डाउट सर।
नहीं, वो तो बताइए कि फिर से रिपीट करेंगे, जहां डाउट हो उसको क्लैरिफाई करेंगे। अब क्या होता है, किसी भी चीज को मैक्सिमाइज या मिनिमाइज करते हैं तो डिफरेंशिएट करने के बाद उसको इक्वल टू क्या कर देते हैं? 0। इक्वल टू 0 करा तो क्या हो जाएगा? ये mu माइनस p, तो p को उस साइड ले गए तो mu इक्वल टू p। तो लास्ट टाइम जो मैं आपको बता रहा था कि लॉ ऑफ डिमांड डिराइव किया है, तो इसी थंब रूल के साथ किया था। कहां पे हमें कंजम्पशन रोकना है? जहां पे मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी उसके प्राइस के बराबर हो जाएगी। तो इस पॉइंट पे क्या हो जाएगा? इस पॉइंट पे क्या हो जाएगा? आपकी टोटल यूटिलिटी मैक्सिमम होगी, राइट? जो आपका टोटल यूटिलिटी नेट बेनिफिट मैक्सिमम होगा, सॉरी, नेट बेनिफिट आपका मैक्सिमम हो जाएगा। नेट बेनिफिट जो है आपका मैक्सिमम हो जाएगा, और यही आपका लॉ है। अब अगर कहते हैं कि कोई कमोडिटी फ्री हो गई, कोई कमोडिटी फ्री हो गई, यानी उसका प्राइस अब आपको मैटर नहीं करेगा, तो कब तक कंज्यूम करना है? जब तक कि उसका mu 0 ना हो जाए, जब तक कि उसका mu 0 ना हो जाए, मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी 0 ना हो जाए, तब तक उसे कंज्यूम करना है, ठीक है? यस
Yes, sir.
हेलो, ऑडिबल?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
इसमें कोई डाउट?
No, sir.
ओके, okay, coming to limitations of the law. So first limitation is suitable units. So whatever units you take in the study, or you know performing this law in some experiment or experiment itself, then suitable unit should be there. Suppose if you make a very big size chapati and then say that you should consume it continuously and then you expect the marginal utility to decline, then it may be very possible that in the first unit itself, person may not eat everything, right? So units should be chosen such a that he can eat continuously and you can count it on. It should not be very small unit. Suppose if you make very small chapati and he can eat hundreds of it, and it should not be very large so that he can eat only half of it, right? So you should have some optimal size of chapati so that at least he can eat 3, 4, 5. So if you make either very big or very small chapati, then law will not be applicable. Then suitable time. So if a person has already eaten, his lunch or dinner, and you want to perform some experiment of LDMU on that person, then it's not suitable time, because person has taken meal, and you want him to consume something more, law will not be applicable. Then change in taste. So suppose he used to prefer mango, but in between something happens during experiment, and he changes his taste preferences. Then also law will not be applicable because he assumed or we impose some restriction that law says that taste and preferences should remain constant. Then normal person. He should be a normal person. In case he is not a normal person, he is a madman, he is abnormal person, he is a miser and a कंजूस व्यक्ति. तो कंजूस व्यक्ति को अगर आप फ्री में कुछ खाने के लिए दोगे एक्सपेरिमेंट में, then he may continue to eat more than he can really consume. Okay. Abnormal person, mad people don't have limitations. Eccentric people, self-centered people, so they behave differently. So they are not normal. So for such abnormal person, law will not be applicable. Then constant income. So we assume that the income should remain constant. But if income changes, he feels I am more rich, so he may be inclined to eat more. Constant income, right? Then, if this assumption is violated, it's not applicable, right? Limitation. Then, non-ordinary goods. Non-ordinary goods means some goods which are rare collections, some paintings like Mona Lisa painting, which is only one in the world. For such things, you cannot have this law applicable because only one unit is available in the whole world. Or even if you want rare collection, people want to collect more because collecting more gives them more value, more utility. Utility will never fall from collection. So, bigger the collection, greater the utility. For such things, law is not applicable. Then, change in other people's stock. So, how can other people's stock of anything or consumption of anything affect you? It's very likely that other person has a telephone and you too have a telephone, and many other people want to have telephone, then your utility for telephone will increase. Same is for mobile. So here is one thing that we should name it. So that is called as network effect. So if some commodities consumption has a network effect, that your consumption increases when other people who join that club. जैसे टेलीफोन का क्लब है, टेलीफोन का नेटवर्क बढ़ता है, ज्यादा लोग जुड़ते हैं तो उसकी यूटिलिटी बढ़ जाती है. So if that is the thing, law will not be applicable. So टेलीफोन, मोबाइल और भी कोई ऐसा ग्रुप है या नेटवर्क है जहाँ पे जितने ज्यादा लोग नेटवर्क में रहेंगे उतना बेनिफिट है, तो ये लॉ एप्लीकेबल नहीं है. Then other people's possessions or other possessions. So other possessions means the quantity of substitute or complements, if they increase or decrease during the period of consumption, then it's likely to affect the utility and law will not be applicable. Because when you have more of complementary goods, like if you are preparing tea and you have sugar or something to eat with the tea, the utility of tea increases. If you have biscuits to dip in the tea, definitely utility of the tea will increase. And if you have something like substitute, so after serving you tea, if I bring in coffee also, some people may stop consumption of tea and will start consumption of coffee. So that will reduce the utility of tea because they also like coffee, which is a substitute of tea. Then what is limitation is durable goods. Durable goods, they provide their services over a long period of time, and therefore their consumption is extended to so many years or very long period of time. So law is not applicable because there is intermittent consumption. It's not continuous consumption that we have assumed in the law. Then other thing is fashion, or you can say fashionable things. So if something is in fashion, its utility goes up. So you have bought a dress and something happens on YouTube or internet, and it goes viral and it becomes a fashion. So utility of that thing you have suddenly goes up. So for those things, fashionable things, it's not applicable, right? So and quality. So regarding this, the text is not very clear, but law will not be applicable if successive units, consumed are inferior in quality. So we assume that goods are homogeneous in nature, the very first assumption or restriction we place. So that is violated here if successive units. So if you suppose for smokers, gold flake is very good. So if you bring something that is very inferior to gold flake cigarettes, then people may want to have more consumption of cigarettes. So apart from these, this law is applicable whether goods are or commodities are goods or bads. So this law is applicable regardless of whether commodities are goods or bad. So bad commodities like cigarettes, even for cigarette, the law is applicable. For drugs, it's also applicable, right? For some, because you cannot consume more of anything. And one important thing we need to understand is marginal utility is inversely related with supply of the commodity. Marginal utility is inversely related with supply of commodity or stock of something. So as we get more supply of something, marginal utility of that thing decreases. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is important here to understand is marginal utility of money is never zero or negative in normal circumstances. Unless there is something called demonetization happens. So unless that is the case, marginal utility of money is never zero. Why it's never zero? Because money represents general purchasing power. General purchasing power. You can buy anything with money. You can buy anything with money. So if you have money, enough money, you can satisfy all your wants, right? If you have large sum of money, like maybe owners of Walmart, Amazon, they have so big money that they can buy anything. So money can buy, all you need to satisfy your wants. So its utility can never fall to zero, or never it can be negative, right? Then the question is why marginal utility decreases? Because we said marginal utility is inversely related with supply. Marginal utility of money is never zero or negative. But then in this also, I gave you small test quiz. Was there? This question was there, right? And the question is why NU decreases? Marginal utility decreases because of two reasons. One is bonds are unlimited and each particular bond is satiable. And because bonds are unlimited, everyone knows, and each particular bond is satiable. Second is goods are imperfect substitute. Goods are imperfect substitute. So because of these two reasons, marginal utility decreases. So why the second one? First one you know. Why second one? Because all goods tend to be consumed together. You cannot say that I consume uh, consumption of some movie, television, but you cannot say that I don't consume electricity. To watch a movie, you have to invariably consume electricity, right? So now coming to its practical utility, where law is applicable, very quickly, uh, we'll understand practical importance. So one is taxation. You want to tax rich people and you want to subsidize poor people, or you want more tax on rich people and less tax on poor people, just because marginal utility of money. राजेश अभी और 12 मिनट हो गए, कुछ थोड़ा वेट करो. Marginal utility of money is less for rich people. marginal utility of money is less for rich people and more for poor people, because rich people have lot of money. So more stock, less utility. Less stock, more utility. Right? So rich people should be taxed and poor people should be subsidized. How should be they subsidized? Whatever tax we are receiving from rich people, it should be transferred to poor people. This is the basic principle based on which we say that welfare economics works. So they said this is the you know amount of margin utility, poor people. This is rich people. Okay. Now they say that you should tax rich people until then their marginal utility of rich people and poor people are equal. This is what the welfare economics, classical welfare economics says. Then second is price determination. How it is applicable to price determination? So because it forms a basis for theory of value, upon which this classical economics is established, or Marshallian economics is based. So with increase in supply, the value of commodity must fall. That is the principle we follow. So we understood that marginal utility is inversely related with supply. So it's marginal utility which is deciding price. That's what theory of value is. We'll go further detail. One thing related with this is why water is so cheap and diamond is so costly. Why diamond is so costly? That's what is called as water diamond paradox. Water diamond paradox. What is water diamond paradox? Anyone? Yes? Anyone? Yes? No? Okay. So there are two concepts for value. One is value in use, one is value in exchange. So what Adam Smith told, so this paradox was given by Adam Smith. He questioned it in his book, the famous book Wealth of Nations. In that he said, water has lot of use value. Water has lot of use value. That means it is useful for all our, necessities. It's a necessary good. But its exchange value is very less. And diamond is something whose use value is very less, but exchange value is very high. Exchange value मतलब आजकल प्राइस में समझा exchange value को. उसके बदले में क्या मिल जाएगा? तो डायमंड के बदले में चाहे जो ले लो, और वाटर के बदले में एक रिवर फ्रंट पे खड़े होके और वाटर के बदले में क्या ले लोगे? So this is water diamond paradox. Water is very cheap और कहीं तो फ्री में मिल रहा है. Diamond it's never free. So this is water diamond paradox. उसने ये अपने आप में बदल किया. And what is solution? उसने पूछा ऐसा क्यों होता है? So Marshall said marginal utility is inversely related with supply. जो मैं आपको ऑलरेडी डिस्कस कर चुका हूँ. तो वाटर की सप्लाई बहुत ज्यादा है तो उसकी मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी कम है, और डायमंड की सप्लाई कम है इसलिए उसकी मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी ज्यादा है. और मार्जिनल यूटिलिटी प्राइस का बेसिस है जैसा मार्शल ने कहा है. सो अकॉर्डिंगली वाटर डायमंड पैराडॉक्स गॉट सोल्ड बाय he solved it solved it. So Marshall solved it. This is what was water diamond paradox. Then household expenditure. Household expenditure. So we restrict our purchases, so that we will have more marginal utility, because larger the purchase, lower the utility, smaller the purchase, greater the utility. So we want to spend as much less money to buy more goods, so that we have larger utility. Then this is the law on the basis of which several other economic laws are derived. So basis of several economic laws. Several economic laws like law of demand, consumer surplus, elasticity of demand, law of substitution, right? They are all based on this law. They are all based on this law. Then it is the basis of socialism. It is the basis of socialism. How? So I already told. So we should tax rich people and we should subsidize poor people. So redistribution of wealth in favor of poor. Redistribution of.
सर फोर्थ पॉइंट क्या है?
हाँ.
फोर्थ सर, फोर्थ रिपीट कीजिएगा.
ये वाला. I mean to say that based on this LDM, you law of diminishing marginal utility, we derived law of demand, we derived a demand curve, we derived a consumer surplus, we derived elasticity of demand, we derived a law of substitution. So several laws were derived on the basis of this law. So that's practical utility of this law. अभी और explain?
यस, ओके सर.
ओके ठीक है, फिर आगे चलेंगे. Then last, it is on the basis of this law that you find downward sloping demand curve. You know why demand curve is sloping downward? Because marginal utility curve is downward sloping. Marginal utility curve is downward sloping, right? ऐसा ही होता है ना? Marginal utility curve is downward sloping, therefore demand curve is downward sloping. So this is all for today's class. So if you have any query, just ask. I will try to respond and clarify the concept. Yes? Anything? Anything need to discuss? So yes? Anyone? Yes, any student?
No, sir.
No?
नो सर.
No, sir.
Still waiting? No? Okay. Thank you for joining. Tomorrow once again at 5 o'clock. Right?
थैंक यू सर.
Thank you,
Okay,
sir.
sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Pardon, मैंने तो म्यूट कर रखा था. Oh my God. Any problem? कल 5 बजे?
यस सर.
नो सर.
यस सर.
ओके, तो कल 5 बजे मिलेंगे. इसमें कोई डाउट नहीं?
No, sir.
No, sir.
नो सर.
नो सर.
ओके ओके ठीक है. मैं इसकी रिकॉर्डिंग भी शेयर करूंगा आप लोगों के साथ. ये सब कुछ रिकॉर्ड हो रहा है. ठीक.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes.